The Empire's greatest nightmare. An Earth warship materializes from nowhere. The fold takes 7 seconds. I counted all 7. The bridge of the Meridian carried 46 people, and not one of them made a sound as the fold space bled off the hull in crackling sheets, electric blue, the color of something enormous finally letting go of a breath it had been holding since before I was born. The ship groaned once, deep in her frame, the way old buildings creak in cold weather, and then she went still. We were already there. Already on the other side. Already 312 light-years from every person I had ever known, sitting a third of an astronomical unit from the capital world of an empire that had looked at everything humanity had ever built, every city, every ocean, every grave, every song, every argument, every invention we had ever been proud of, and filed it under a category called promising but irrelevant. They had moved on in 11 days. 43 days later, my father was sitting at a committee table in Geneva, and the committee had a name and a budget, and a mission statement and a podium, and a photographer had come to take pictures of the historic occasion, and my father was standing in front of that podium shaking hands with a space that contained nobody, because the species they had been preparing to meet had already decided not to show up. He never said anything about that photograph. He folded the survey report into his coat pocket and kept it there. I turned the photograph on my console face down. Nina Cole was at the navigation station to my left, her eyes already moving across the fold exit telemetry with the specific calm of someone who has trained for 9 years for a moment, and now that the moment is here, is treating it the same as any other morning. She was 26, born the year after the survey. She had never known a world that did not already know the Calveth existed. For her, the weight of 30 years of silence and preparation, and grief and engineering compressed into this one arrival, was not weight at all. It was homework. She had actually said that. 2 days out from Saul, during the final briefing, she had tilted back in her chair and said, "The homework is all done, now we hand it in." She had said it easily, the way young people say things that would hollow out someone older. I had not yet decided if I found her insufferable, or if she was simply the most correct person on the ship. "Passive sensors only," I said to Owen Hart at the tactical station. "Give me the full picture." He gave me the picture. Calveth Prime sat ahead of us, large and blue-green and unhurried, wrapped in the organized architecture of a civilization that had been doing this for 4 centuries. Orbital stations, defense platforms, transit lanes thick with civilian vessels moving in patterns so old they looked like tide. The whole system breathed with the deep rhythm of something that had forgotten what uncertainty felt like. And then there was us. One ship, sitting where no ship should be, having arrived in a way their sensors would have logged as physically impossible. A cold fold exit, a fold that shed no thermal bloom, left no gravity wake, produced no electromagnetic pulse, was something the Calveth had never encountered. Not because they lacked the engineering, because it had never occurred to them to look for it. It had occurred to us. "Their early warning grid is activating," Owen said. 14 stations, 18, 23. "How fast?" "Faster than standard response protocol, slower than emergency protocol." A pause. "They are not sure what this is." "Good." Grace Ellison was already at the communications array, translation matrix running, listening to the civilian channels that had lit up across the orbital platforms. Her expression carried the careful blank of someone processing content they have chosen not to react to out loud. "What are they saying?" I asked. She looked at me, screaming mostly. That was fair. Their automated systems were trying to classify us. Owen pulled the classification feed from their defense network. We had held the decryption keys for 17 years, one more thing the lost drone had given us, and put it on the main screen. Unknown vessel, profile unmatched, power signature catastrophic, fold entry method no record, vessel class error. The Meridian's hull profile read civilian. Her power core read like a warship. Her fold wake read like nothing in their database. Their computers were not simply confused. They were contradicting each other in real time, each subsystem reaching a different conclusion from the same set of inputs. One word for that. Usu. Leo Marsh spoke from the science station. Commander, their scanning probes are going to get unusual readings on our forward composite layers. I know. The material properties do not match anything in their catalog. Let them look. The forward hull composite was a direct development from the drive core materials. The same impossible alloy that had been sitting on a Martian shelf, in a survey drone that an empire had written off as lost, before a 12-year-old girl watched her father fold a report into his coat pocket and decided, somewhere deep and cold in her chest where decisions like that actually get made, that this was not the last chapter of that story. It was not. Commander, Carl Dune at the engineering station spoke without looking up. Fold drive is fully cycled down, all systems nominal. Keep them nominal, nothing that reads as hostile. We were not here to threaten. Threats come from a position of fear. Demonstrations come from a position of certainty. I wanted the Calveth Empire to feel the difference between those two things before we said a single word. By the 22nd minute, Owen reported 61 capital ships in weapons range. They formed a sphere around us. Precise, clean geometry, every ship positioned for overlapping coverage, the whole structure designed so that nothing inside it could move without entering a corridor where something was pointed at it. They did not fire. I had planned for this. When you arrive in one ship, one where you could have brought a fleet, you are making a statement before you open your mouth. The statement is, we counted your ships before we came. The statement is, the number did not change our decision. The statement is, do the math on what that means about us. They were doing the math. I could tell by the fact that 61 warships were sitting completely still. The first hail is coming through, Grace said. Civilian or military? Civilian, orbital station administrator. A pause. He sounds very concerned. Do not answer him. We wait for fleet command. We waited 11 more minutes. During those 11 minutes, nobody on the bridge spoke. Nina annotated her navigation charts. Owen logged the movement of every Calveth vessel in the system. Grace listened to the civilian channels and did not react to their content. Leo documented the probe return data. 46 people in a ship that had no right to be here, doing their jobs. The fleet command hail arrived on military frequency, senior encryption, and the voice on the other end carried the clipped, unhurried cadence of a Commodore who had spent his career being the most powerful presence in any room, and did not have the behavioral vocabulary for a situation where that might not be true. He used the standard Imperial Challenge Protocol, 3 sentences, authority stated, our subordinate status assumed, demand issued. He did not know that he had phrased the demand in the high formal register. The register the Calveth reserved for exchanges between equals. He did not know we knew the difference. I picked up the comm. Owen looked at me. Grace looked at me. Even Nina looked up from her console just for a moment. I took one breath, not for courage. Courage was something I had worn smooth over 30 years until what remained was not brave or afraid, but simply settled, like a lock and a door that have been in contact so long they have become the same object. The breath was for theater. I opened the channel. I spoke in Calveth Prime dialect. Not contact register, not trade language, prime dialect, high formal, the register of equals. Commodore, this is Commander Yale Voss, commanding the Earth Space and Naval Service Vessel Meridian, representing the government of Earth, Sol System. We have entered your home system for the purpose of formal diplomatic contact. We carry no hostile intent. We will remain at current position. The silence lasted 6 full seconds. In those 6 seconds, he was processing 3 things simultaneously. I had addressed him in the correct language, the correct dialect, the correct register, which no unknown contact species should have been capable of doing. His sensors showed a vessel his systems could not classify, and my voice carried the particular calm of someone who is exactly where they intended to be and had been intending it for a long time. "You speak the prime dialect," he said. "We have been studying your language for 29 years. That is not possible. We had a good starting point." He went quiet. "What starting point?" "Your civilization lost a survey drone in our system in 2031. We found it 43 days after your fleet departed. We have been studying it and everything it carried ever since." There is a sound a very powerful person makes when an assumption they have held for a long time quietly and completely breaks. It is not a loud sound. It is 4 seconds of silence with a specific texture. The texture of someone recalculating every decision they have made on the basis of that assumption and arriving at a number they do not like. The Commodore made that sound. "Stand by for the Imperial High Council," he said, and closed the channel. Owen exhaled. The first full exhale he had managed since the fold. Grace set down her stylus. Leo looked briefly at the ceiling. Nina had gone back to her console. She had a spreadsheet open. She was color-coding columns. I walked to the viewport and looked at the old star and the old world, and the geometry of 61 warships arranged around us in a sphere of perfect, waiting attention. I did not look at the photograph. 42 minutes later, the Grand Counselor came on the line. His voice was old and precise. The kind of precise that comes not from effort but from decades of being listened to by people who act on every word. He told me the High Council would receive one representative in person, before the imperial throne. He did not say please. I said yes. The bridge went quiet in a way that was different from all the previous quiets. This one had an edge to it. Owen said, "You are going alone." "Yes. There are 61 warships between the shuttle bay and their station." "I know." "Then why?" "Because when you come in one ship," I said, "you walk into their throne room alone. That is the entire point of coming in one ship." He did not answer that. I turned from the viewport and walked to the shuttle bay. I did not hurry. I did not look back. The photograph stayed face down on the console. The shuttle was small and functional, and flew between 61 warships with the calm of a vessel that had no opinion on its own significance. Nina had plotted the approach manually, threading through the formation along a route that passed within 40 meters of 3 separate capital ship hulls. They were enormous. The Calvith built ships the way old civilizations built temples, with the intention that the size itself would communicate something. Every hull was layered with the geometric markings of rank and history and conquest, centuries pressed into metal in a visual language that said, clearly and without apology, "We have been here a long time, and we intend to remain." I flew past them slowly. I was not in a hurry. The capital station was a structure the size of a small moon, built in concentric rings around a central spine extending several kilometers in both directions. Every element served a purpose. The purpose was unmistakable. This was the center of something, and the center was meant to be felt by anyone who approached it. A docking signal guided me in. The bay was attended by 6 Calvith officers in formal armor, the ceremonial kind, decorative in construction but performing the same social function as dress uniforms everywhere, communicating seriousness, occasion, the recognition of weight. They looked at me. I looked at them. They were slightly taller than humans, with wider shoulder structure and eyes set a little further apart, giving their faces an open, alert quality. They were not frightening. They were simply different, in the exact way that anything is different from what you have spent your entire life imagining it to be. My father had imagined them across 43 notebooks. I stepped out of the shuttle, nodded to the senior officer, and said in prime dialect, "I am expected." He led me without speaking. The council chamber was at the top of the station's central spine, reached by a transit corridor deliberately designed to take time. You did not arrive at the imperial throne in minutes. The walk was itself part of the ceremony, the approach communicating that you understood the weight of where you were going. I understood. I had read every analysis of Calveth Court protocol we had been able to extract from 3 decades of intercepted communications. I knew the room before I entered it. The chamber was large, high-ceilinged, the walls lined with a continuous mosaic stretching floor to ceiling, a map of the explored galaxy as the Calveth understood it. Every system they had catalogued, every route they had charted, every world they had named or claimed or surveyed over 4 centuries of expansion. Thousands of points of light arranged across the walls like a declaration. I looked for Saul. It was not there. I said nothing about that. I noted it, stored it, and moved my eyes to the 7 figures seated in a curved formation at the far end of the chamber. The Grand Counselor sat at the center. He was older than his voice had suggested, silver-haired, with the still posture of a person who had been powerful for so long that power no longer required demonstration. He looked at me with genuine curiosity. Not contempt, not hostility, curiosity, the specific curiosity of a person encountering something that does not fit their model of the world and wanting very much to understand how that is possible. I walked to the position marked by the floor. I stood. "Commander Voss," the Grand Counselor said, "you have surprised us." I said nothing to that. Surprise was their word and their frame. He continued, "The survey record from your system indicated a young civilization, technically developing, not yet at the threshold for formal contact. I am aware of the record. How is it that a civilization assessed at that level 46 years ago has arrived here, in a vessel of this capability, through a propulsion method we have no record of?" I told him exactly how. 43 days after your survey fleet left our system, one of your probe drones failed to complete its return flight. It came to rest on the surface of our 4th planet, 3 meters beneath the soil. Your fleet had already departed. The drone was logged as a write-off in your mission records. I watched his expression. "We found it before the year was out. We spent the next 29 years studying everything inside it, the drive components, the navigation systems, the material composites, the data cores. Every piece of it. We built on what we found. We developed what we did not yet understand until we understood it. And then we built a ship." The chamber was quiet. "One ship," he said. "One ship. Why only one?" "Because one was enough to say what we needed to say." He was still for a moment. Then, "And what is it you need to say, Commander Voss? What have you traveled 300 light-years to tell us?" I reached into the inner pocket of my uniform and placed a single data card on the floor between us. I did not approach his position. "We are requesting a formal reclassification. Sol System, Earth. Your 2031 survey record currently carries a Class II pre-stellar civilization notation." I paused. "We would like it updated." The Grand Counselor looked at the data card. He looked at me. He looked at the data card again. "That is what you came for," he said. It was not quite a question. "That is what we came for. You crossed 300 light-years. In a vessel of unprecedented capability, with 61 of our warships surrounding you for a database entry." "For an accurate database entry," I said, "yes." He was quiet for a moment that stretched past comfortable. Then he said something I had not expected. "Your father's name was on that first contact committee." The floor mosaic held 1,000 worlds beneath my feet, none of them Saul. I looked at the counselor and did not let anything move in my face. Yes, I said. He was a linguist. He was. He spent 11 years on that program. He did. And you have spent 30 years on this one. I said nothing. He reached down and picked up the data card. He held it for a moment, then set it beside him on the armrest of his seat. We will review your reclassification request, he said, and we will have further conversations about what your arrival means for the existing framework of imperial space. There are questions that require answering. I will answer 3 of them now, I said. The rest I am leaving open. He looked at me with the expression of a man who had just recognized the shape of a game being played and was deciding whether to be irritated by it or interested. He appeared to land on interested. I answered his 3 questions. I left the other 12 unaddressed. Then I walked back through the corridor, past the mosaic of a galaxy with no Sol in it, out through the docking bay and into my shuttle, and I flew home between 61 ships whose hulls I did not look at. I kept my eyes forward. The photograph was in my pocket the entire time. I had carried it in there without deciding to. I did not take it out. The meridian held position in the amber light of an old star, one ship in the center of an empire, waiting for me to come back. I brought the shuttle in. I went back to the bridge. Nina looked at me. The council is in extended session. All 61 ships have held position. No aggressive moves. Good. Also, she added, I finished the spreadsheet. Is it thorough? It has 47 columns. I sat down in the command chair for the first time since we had arrived. The old star's light was warm and low across the bridge. The ship breathed around me, the quiet mechanical breathing of a vessel at rest, all systems nominal, crew steady. I turned the photograph face down again. I told myself it was because the light was hitting the glass at the wrong angle. It came at hour 9. Not from the Commodore, not from Fleet Command, not from anyone with the authority to order it. 4 destroyers broke from the eastern arc of the perimeter formation at the same moment, accelerating on a trajectory that Owen Hart read in under 2 seconds. 4 contacts moving, bearing 271, kinetic rounds, not energy weapons. Round velocity is below a kill threshold. They are not trying to destroy us. He looked at me. They are testing the hull. They want to see how we respond. I sat with that for 3 seconds. An unauthorized test. A faction inside the imperial military that had decided the best way to answer an unknown was to prod it and measure what bled. I understood the impulse. Military thinking everywhere ran on the same instinct: poke the thing, read the reaction, update your assessment. The problem was that reading our reaction was going to update their assessment in a direction they had not prepared for. Owen, how many tactical response options in the current matrix? 63 confirmed. We are taking option 7. He looked at it. He looked at me. Something moved through his expression, not protest, not doubt. A specific kind of respect that comes from watching someone make a precise decision with complete stillness. He executed option 7. The Meridian's forward battery fired 4 times. Each round was precisely targeted, precisely timed, and calibrated with a care that no one on the receiving end would miss. We did not aim for hull panels. We did not aim for crew quarters. We did not aim for weapons arrays. We targeted the drives. All 4 destroyers, simultaneously, from 2/3 of an astronomical unit away in under 4 seconds. 4 drives went dark. 4 ships drifting, life support running, crews unharmed, weapons systems intact and completely useless, because a warship with no drive capability is not a warship. It is a very expensive room floating in space, and now it was a very expensive room floating in the middle of the Calveth Home System's own defensive perimeter, which was a problem the Imperial fleet would have to sort out for themselves. That was the intention. We did not build a weapon today. We sent a message in the only register a military force actually reads, demonstrated capability exercised with deliberate restraint. You were not fast enough to stop this. We were not willing to harm your people to prove it. Hold those two facts side by side and think about the space between them. I picked up the comm. The Commodore was already transmitting on fleet frequency, clearly, and in language that Grace noted with a very controlled expression was not appropriate for the formal register. I waited for him to finish. Then I opened the channel to the council. The Grand Counselor came on immediately. His voice had lost the studied calm of the chamber. It was not broken, it was cracked, the way old stone cracks when new pressure finds a line it did not know was there. Commander Voss, the action taken was not authorized. The officers responsible will face. I know it was not authorized, I said. That is not my concern. My concern is what you take from our response. Silence. We targeted their drives, I said. Not their weapons, not their hulls, not their crews, their drives, all four. At a distance of 0.6 astronomical units, in under 4 seconds, we could have made other choices. We chose specifically. He said nothing. The Meridian did not come here to start a conflict, I said. We came to change a database entry. That is still what we want. But your fleet has now seen what we chose not to do, and I believe that information is useful to you. The counselor said, very quietly, "How many vessels do you have, Commander Voss?" I let the silence hold for a moment. "We sent one ship," I said. I let that sit. Think about what that means. I closed the channel. The bridge was very still. The amber light lay across everything in long, warm lines. Owen was watching the Calveth fleet respond to the 4 drifting destroyers, rescue vessels dispatching, formation adjusting, command frequencies lighting up with the administrative noise of an unauthorized action and its full consequences. Carl Dune said quietly, from engineering, "They are going to be sorting that out for a while." Nina said nothing. She was updating the spreadsheet. I watched her work, the neat, precise motion of her hands moving across the interface, color-coding a column she had titled Fleet Response Time to Precision Engagement, and I felt something I did not have an exact word for. Not pride. Something older. Something that lived in the same part of the chest where old grief lives but was not grief anymore. Leo Marsh spoke. "Commander, do you think they will try again?" "No," I said. I was correct. The formal communication came 6 hours later, from the Grand Counselor himself, sealed with the Council's highest diplomatic encryption, the kind reserved for negotiations between recognized peer civilizations. They were ready to proceed. The document took 11 hours to prepare. The Calveth legal framework was ancient and layered, built up over 4 centuries of expansion, each edition resting on the ones beneath it like geological strata. Grace and I worked through every section together, her translating the formal legal register, me checking every clause against the 30 years of intercepted communications and cultural analysis stored in the Meridian's data cores. There were 48 items that required revision. The counselors argued 17 of them. I conceded none. Not from stubbornness, from preparation. Every clause I had written knowing it would be argued. I already knew which objections were genuine legal concerns and which were the reflex of an empire that had written the rules of known space for 4 centuries, trying to maintain a framework in which it remained the entity doing the writing. I had patience for the genuine concerns. I had none for the reflex. On the 23rd item, a counselor named Ferris, younger than the Grand Counselor, with the specific sharpness of someone who had climbed high by being the most capable person at every table she had ever sat at, challenged a clause she called overreaching. The clause stated that Earth reserved the right to respond to any threat against any world classified as pre-stellar civilization, regardless of imperial territorial designation. That clause gives you operational authority inside our borders, she said. Yes, I said. You are proposing to act within imperial space on behalf of civilizations we hold administrative authority over. I am proposing to be inconvenient, I said. We have some experience with that. She stared at me. You found our drone, she said. It was not the first time someone in this chamber had said that. She was saying it differently. She was saying it the way a person says a thing when they are working out what it actually means, not just what it describes. We found your drone, I confirmed. You spent 29 years taking it apart. 29 years, 4 months, and 11 days. She was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that is not agreement but is not resistance either. It is the quiet of recalculation. Why did you wait so long? She asked. Once you had the drive technology, once you had the language, you could have made contact years ago. I looked at her directly. We were not ready, I said, and being ready mattered. You assessed our system and moved on in 11 days. We needed to be something worth coming back to. That took time. We used the time. Ferris looked at the table. Something in her expression shifted, not softening exactly, but adjusting. The way a calculation adjusts when a variable it had dismissed turns out to carry more weight than the original model assigned it. The Grand Counselor said from the head of the table, "The clause stands." Ferris did not argue further. We continued. Item 31 was the reclassification itself, the formal amendment to the survey record, changing Earth's designation from Class II pre-stellar civilization to Class I peer civilization. In the Calveth system, that classification carried the full suite of diplomatic recognition: the right to independent space operations, the right to negotiate bilateral agreements, the right to be consulted on decisions affecting nearby systems, the right to exist in the galaxy on our own terms. The Grand Counselor picked up the signing instrument. He paused before he used it. Your father's program, he said, the First Contact Committee, 2031. I said nothing. He prepared for this. He prepared for a version of this, I said, the version where you came to us. The counselor looked at the record for a moment, then he signed it. One number changed, Class II to Class I. A single notation on a database record that no human had been able to access without imperial authorization until this moment. 30 years. My father's 11 before that. Carl's decade engineering the drive assembly. Nina's entire life, shaped from birth by a world that had already been pointing at this moment before she was old enough to understand it. One notation. I looked at the mosaic on the floor. The great map spread beneath my feet, every known system marked and named, the full record of Calveth expansion laid out across centuries. Sol was not on it. I had noticed that when I first entered this chamber. I had noticed it every day of the 4 sessions it had taken to complete this document. I had not said a single word about it to anyone. The Grand Counselor walked me to the docking bay himself. At the door he stopped. The mosaic, he said, you looked at it every day. Yes. Sol's system is not represented. I noticed. He said, we will update it. I looked at him. Yes, I said, you will. I shook his hand in prime register form, both hands, the formal acknowledgement between equals, and I walked to my shuttle. And I flew home one final time through a formation that had changed its shape. Not a blockade anymore, a corridor. The 61 ships held their positions with the space between them open, and I flew through it without hurrying, looking neither left nor right, and I came back to the meridian in the amber light of an old star that had been burning since before humans had language to describe it. Nina was at her station when I walked onto the bridge, Owen at tactical, Grace at communications, Leo and Carl at their stations, all of them there, the same way they had been there when I left, because that is what a crew does. It holds the position and it waits, and it does not stop being itself while you are gone. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Owen said, "It is done." "It is done," I said. Grace made a sound that was not quite a word and not quite a breath, somewhere precisely between them. Leo looked at the ceiling for a moment, which was his way of processing things that did not have immediate responses. Carl Dune, who had spent 10 years of his life designing the drive assembly that had gotten us here, sat at his engineering station with the steady expression of a man who has just watched a very long calculation reach its final answer and confirmed that the answer was correct. Nina was typing. "Closing the spreadsheet?" I asked. "Archiving it," she said. "It has 62 columns now." I sat in the command chair. The old star's light was warm across the forward viewport. Calveth Prime sat ahead of us, the same world it had been this morning, the same world it had been 46 years ago when a fleet of survey drones had departed Sol system without looking back. Large and old and unchanged, wrapped in its ancient machinery of civilization, 4 centuries deep and still breathing. It looked like old photographs. Everything in this system looked like old photographs. "Commander," Nina said, not looking up, "ready for fold coordinates when you have a destination." I pulled up the navigation archive. I searched for a specific entry, a star system 7 light-years from Calveth Prime, flagged in Imperial records as a routine survey target. Current classification, Class II pre-stellar civilization, strategically negligible, not yet ready for formal contact. The same words. The exact same words from the same category, applied to a different world circling a different star, full of people who had been doing what people do, building things, nomming things, looking up at their sky, and wondering if the rest of it was empty or full. "Set course for these coordinates," I said. Nina looked at the entry. She looked at the classification note attached to it. She was quiet for a moment, a real quiet, the first full silence I had heard from her in 4 days, the kind of quiet that comes not from having nothing to say but from having just understood something that had not fully landed before. Then she said, "They do not know we are coming." "No," I said. "They have never had contact with a spacefaring civilization." "No." "So when we arrive?" "When we arrive," I said, "they will know they are not alone, they will know someone came, they will know they were considered worth coming to." I paused for a moment. "That matters more than you know, a lot more." She looked at me, really looked at me, with the focused attention of someone revising their understanding of a person they thought they had already mapped completely, taking in something that had been present the whole time and only now resolved into the right shape. Then she looked back at her console and began entering the fold coordinates. I reached into my pocket. I took out the photograph. My father, 2031, the pressed collar, the committee podium, the handshake extended toward a space that held nobody. His face carried the particular brightness of a man who has waited his entire life for something and has just been told it is finally coming. He did not yet know that it would not come, not to him, not in his time. I set the photograph on the console beside me. "Face up." I left it there. "Fold drive is spun up," Carl reported from engineering. "All systems ready, standing by on your mark." "All hands," I said into the shipwide channel, "prepare for fold." The meridian came alive around me, the deep hum of the drive cycling to full power, the quiet adjustment of systems moving from rest to readiness. 46 people settling into their stations, with the practiced ease of a crew that has made this jump before, and will make it again as many times as it needs to be made. I looked at the photograph for one more second. He had spent 11 years preparing to meet them. The notebooks, the committee, the speech worked over for 6 years, the pressed collar and the extended hand and the photographer who had come to document a historic moment that turned out, that day, to be a room full of people shaking hands with empty air. I had spent 30 years making sure the next world on the list would not have to wait, would not have to wonder, would not have to fold a report into a coat pocket and carry it there in silence until it became part of the coat. I did not know if those were the same thing. I had carried that question for 30 years, and it had never resolved into a clean answer. I had stopped expecting it to. I looked at the coordinates on the navigation screen. A star 7 light-years away, a world I had never seen, full of people I had never met, who had been looking up at their sky their whole lives wondering if it was empty or full. It was not empty. "Mark," I said. The fold took 7 seconds. I counted all 7. On the other side, somewhere ahead in the dark between stars, there was a world that did not know we were coming. There were people there who would wake up one morning to the news that a ship had appeared from nowhere, a single ship, quiet and steady in their sky, carrying the answer to the oldest question any civilization has ever asked.